I guess you might wonder why politicians lie all the time, and people are rightfully so, I guess. I think so, complaining about it. Why are these politicians lying all the time? They're just making up, they're saying nonsense. They're just arguing like little children are doing, basically. How come? Why aren't they honest? I think there are many reasons to it, many ways to explain it. There are many ways to explain it, but I would say one of the biggest reasons is the fact that that's what they're supposed to do, which might sound counterintuitive. I don't know, but what I mean is, I think it's not very counterintuitive because most people know that that's what politicians do. Basically, they lie all the time and they make up stories and they backtrack and they never admit faults and they blame it on the other party. That's the way of the politician. It's it's a farce, literally. But I would say that apart from that, even more so, there's deeper reasons to it, or maybe not deeper, but other ways of explaining it. Because as a famous article by two brilliant article writers, two brilliant researcher called Hugo Mercier and Dan Sperber, they wrote an article called "Why Do Humans Reason? Arguments for Argumentative Theory," which has been cited a lot. It's from 2011, so it's not didn't come out yesterday, but it's still really. I don't know if it's been challenged. Maybe it has, but they make the claim that we are actually, or politicians or humans in general, are programmed to do exactly what politicians are doing. What politicians are doing is actually, again, what humans are programmed to do through evolution. Evolution has programmed human beings to act in that way. The reason, the reason for the way we reason is because of evolution. And what they say is, you would, because we critique the politicians, of course. I mean, this isn't to let them off the hook or anything. I'm just saying that they are using the faculties of the human mind in the way that it's really supposed to be used. The human mind or brain or, whatever the human organism isn't built to find truth. You might think so. You might think, just as a lot of philosophers throughout the ages have thought. For example, Immanuel Kant, the famous German philosopher, he thought that human reasoning is sort of like a gift from God through our ability to reason, compared to, of course, it's a big step up from all other animals in the animal kingdom on Earth to be able to reason. And he thought that, and he even wrote a critique of pure reason. And I haven't read it, so I'm not going to go into it. But he thought that our ability to reason is a gift from God. It's incredible how we are able to, formulate these ideas and think about the nature of the universe, the thing in itself, and all the things that he spoke about, the moral imperative, to have that kind of morality. And it may seem so. It definitely seems so. But he wasn't aware of evolutionary psychology, which is a somewhat new field. And maybe he would have maintained the same view even if he had were privy to that kind of information. But anyway, so what Mercier and Sperber did in their article, Why Do Humans Reason? Arguments for an Argumentative Theory, they made a bold claim. Again, they made a claim that this, so we have these politicians who lie. I mean, that's a general statement, but something that I think everyone can ascribe to is that they have this very famous cognitive bias called the confirmation bias. in which they are basically neglecting all the evidence or everything that everyone else say from another party that doesn't agree with them. They just neglect it, or they found counter arguments for it. And then everything that agrees with their already held beliefs is affirmed by them. They are they said, that's right, you're right about that. And everything that disagrees, they do the opposite. That's called a confirmation bias. Just as people are searching on the web, for example, and they find things that is in accordance with their own already held beliefs, and the things that isn't, or I mean, they maybe they don't even search for those kinds of things to find counter arguments. And you would think that that is a sort of cognitive bias, as it's even called within the field of cognitive psychology. It's a cognitive bias, the confirmation bias. And you would think that doing that is when people, because we see that with people all the time, not just politicians, every one of us, you and I, we both do that. And the thing is that what they argue in this article is the thesis that this is not a bug. It isn't a bug in the system. They're using the bug as a metaphor, of course. Rather, they say that it's a feature. It's a feature of the human mind, and it has evolved to be like that because, they say, the reason for our ability to reason is not to, like Kant thought we were doing, or he wanted us to do, maybe, to find the truth, to find true morality, to be honest. His moral imperative basically said that we should always speak the truth. That should be the moral imperative. That all our actions the actions that we participate in, or the actions we do, should be able to be held up as a universal law. That is, as far as I understand, the moral imperative. Yet, so that's the way he used reasoning for good, shall we say. But as Mercier and Sperber point out, that is not how humans function. And they say that the reason for it, again, is not because it's a bug, it's because it's the function. It's supposed to be like that because throughout evolution, it hasn't been beneficial to speak the truth. Just look at Jesus. Just look at the people who have been speaking the truth. But even as in, they argue that, they also argue that it is such a widespread phenomenon. So it's weird. It would be weird. Cognitive psychologists have often thought that, it's the limits of the human mind. We're not perfect. But it's so rampant, and there are other biases too that are in accordance with this. Of course, this is a theory. This is sometimes evolutionary psychology is critiqued as being a just so story, but I think it's very compelling because they look at a lot of evidence and they see how people. They use a lot of tests, basically, in which people are able to reason, and we see how people reason, and it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense, and it offers hypotheses, some hypotheses, which we are testable also, which we can test, and it checks out in a lot of ways. So the reason why politicians are lying all the time is because, well, it's of course also because of the context. So they are the context in which they argue are on top of the evolutionary psychology that we inherently inherited. There's also this context that we are on different teams, and I'm in my position because I have these values, and I am, arguing against this other side, or my enemies. So we have that too, for sure. but yeah, it's like it's so fluent for them. Then it's not like they have to train themselves to do this. Again, I said it's almost like small children, because we see little children do this as well. They do it without any training at all, arguing about stuff, not listening to counter arguments, and just neglecting them. And it becomes so obvious because as an adult, you can make much, much better arguments about things, and little children sometimes ask for crazy things. But doesn't matter, it doesn't matter if you have a better argument. They just do the same thing as all the politicians do. It doesn't matter what anybody says. You just keep running that program of the cognitive bias or the confirmation bias, and you just continue doing that, which is, it is how we're wired. It's how we're built. I'm going to read some from the actual article. Reasoning is generally seen as a means to improve knowledge and make better decisions. However, much evidence shows that reasoning often leads to epistemic distortions and poor decisions. So that it's even that. It's not just that we have this confirmation bias. We also, I'm not going to go into it, but they use these different tests, and they see that people often just, when it's a neutral subject, they just come up with an explanation for something. It could be a logical test, as they're using here. And then they don't test the belief. They are unable to test their own beliefs. They only find they're only finding or looking for even other arguments that support their belief, the natural belief that the first solution to a specific logical problem, shall we say. And that's interesting, because that's not the best way to solve a problem. The best way to solve a problem is having a solution and testing that solution. So where we get this is if we have other people around. So if we have a few people around us who are listening to that solution, it's because it didn't originate in their own minds. They are naturally drawn to test it or to question it, and they naturally or easily see counter arguments to that hypothesis or that solution, whatever it is. But the person, him or herself, is not able to, and that is again how we're wired. It's the confirmation bias at play here in a neutral situation. So it's not that you're rooting for, you're not finding reasons for or against abortion or increasing or decreasing taxes. It's a neutral logical problem. There's no reason to have that confirmation bias, but it's still there. It's still rampant, and people are unable to test the hypothesis or the solutions themselves. They have to have other people around them. Yeah. Okay. So they say that this suggests that the functional reasoning should be rethought, and their hypothesis is that the functional reasoning is argumentative. So it's not about reasoning like Kant thought. It is about being able to argue, just as a child is. Again, it's so... it's easy to find arguments for it. So I'm doing that now. I'm doing the confirmation bias hypothesis now, and I'm finding more arguments for this hypothesis. One of them is that it's just so natural. You see children again doing it. They don't, no practice, nothing. They're just naturally argumentative and good at it, especially good at the practice of it. They can't make the great arguments yet because they're children, but the act of doing it and just neglecting everything. And the reason, I haven't come to it, but one of the reasons is that it's about winning arguments, because our speaking and relating to other people in a social way has been in order to, or the reasoning ability has been mostly used, or is best put at use in social situations in which we are arguing for something, to get something, to persuade someone to do something, to, get us off the hook or something like that. That has in an evolutionary sense, been very important for us in terms of survival. So survival has nothing to do with truth. Of course, I mean, it's if people just believe in what we're saying and give us stuff and believe that we are good guys, yeah, we're fine, right? The truth doesn't have anything to do with it. It doesn't matter. So we can see how, and we can see someone, we see how people, whistleblowers, for example, in companies, yeah, they're speaking the truth, but yeah, that's not the way to go, right? If not, if you want to keep your job, not if you want to keep your livelihood. And guess how it went for whistleblowers within, these old cultures, or in hunter-gatherer societies. If there were a norm there, and if there were, people in power and whatnot, and the person didn't adapt to them and didn't use the argumentation for, to benefit the organism, but instead spoke the truth. There's this African proverb called, it goes, a friend of truth has no friends. Yeah, that's it, right? And the person speaking up will be ostracized. Or, it's literally being pushed out of the society in that type of environment. It equals death. So you can see that there are a lot of push throughout the evolution to be good at this and not be good at speaking the truth. Okay. It is, so they continue here. The function is argumentative. It is to devise and evaluate arguments intended to persuade. Reasoning so conceived is adaptive given the exceptional dependence of humans on communication and their vulnerability to misinformation. Misinformation has, since 2011, got an even deeper meaning, I think. A wide range of evidence in psychology of reasoning and decision-making can be reinterpreted and better explained in the light of this hypothesis, because earlier they thought that, yeah, it was just bugs in the system, so to speak. Poor performance in standard reasoning tasks is explained by the lack of argumentative context. So again, if we don't have the context, if we're not in an argumentative setting, our reasoning faculties they don't work as well, basically. When the same problems are placed in a proper argumentative setting, people turn out to be skilled arguers. Skilled arguers, however, are not after the truth, but after arguments supporting their views. This explains the notorious confirmation bias. Yeah, this bias is apparent not only when people are actually arguing, but when they're reasoning proactively from the perspective of having to defend their opinions. Reasoning so motivated can distort evaluations and attitude and allow erroneous belief to persist. Yeah. Okay. In all these instances, traditionally described as failures or flaws, reasoning does exactly what can be expected of an argumentative device. Look for arguments that support the given conclusion and ceteris paribus, I don't know that word, favor conclusions for which arguments can be found. Ceteris paribus. I'll have to look that up. Ceteris paribus means... Okay, I couldn't. Yeah, I'm going to look at it later. So another one I just want to mention before I quit here is that Jonathan Haidt is another, is a psychologist, moral philosopher, whatever you want to call him. He proposes that the human mind isn't really there to help us find truth, but rather that we have this intuition, which he called moral intuitions. And he writes about this in, for example, The Righteous Mind, which is an interesting book, I think. In it, he maintains that we have these intuitions, and it's the intuitions that actually guides us. It's not even the belief in itself that we then find, we use the confirmation bias to affirm even more and neglect arguments against it. But we have an intuition, and the types of intuitions that he speaks about, the most important are intuitions about care and harm, which means protecting individuals from harm and promoting their well-being, and fairness, reciprocity, loyalty, betrayal, fidelity to in-groups, and condemnation or betrayal. Purity, authority, subversion, respect for legitimate authority, and condemnation of subversion. So we have these intuitions, and everybody has them to some extent, but he explains the divide between the Democrats and Republicans, the left and the right, in terms of having more or less of these. So the Democrats or the left side has more of a focus on care and harm and fairness, reciprocity, I think. Not sure. Whereas the Republicans or the right has a much more of these other loyalty, authority, purity, those kinds of things is more important, those intuitions. So a lot of, if it's questions about transgender or abortion or what else? They can be seen in light of this through the perspective of these moral intuitions, and it's not really about the arguments that come out of it, because the arguments comes after the fact, so to speak, whereas the intuitions are a priori, as they say. It comes first, and it's not even how do you say, conscious for us. They are intuitions that are guiding us, and no argument, basically. It's really hard to change someone's intuitions, because it's almost like enjoying a flavor, like chocolate or honey or something, or disliking a flavor. If you dislike, I don't know, salt or something, no one will be able to explain to you why you should enjoy it or why it is really enjoyable, like a lemon or something. If you don't enjoy it, how would someone use arguments to persuade you that it's not? I mean, maybe to a few percent could be persuasive, but it's really hard, because it's not about reasoning, it's not about intellectual understanding, it's about feeling and intuitions and taste, basically. So what are we really talking about? It's in a lot of ways it's nothing. Yet there are, of course, people who it's more complex than nothing. But just looking at how people vote between elections, it tends to be sort of similar, right? They don't seem to change very much. And there are a lot of arguments from both sides, but the intuitions remain the same. You can't have someone to just persuade someone else that something else is better, which goes against their moral intuition, using Jonathan Haidt's reasoning. So, again, these politicians have moral intuitions guiding them in their pursuit of happiness, and on top of that, they're using this the human faculty that is actually, I mean, again, it doesn't exclude them from responsibility when they are literally lying about stuff. I think we should hold them, the society should hold them accountable for sure, but it's very differently than it's very different than the point that I'm making. I'm just saying that it's not the context that they are in. For one, is very much geared towards this. They can't change their mind. You can't have someone on the right side to just say, no, maybe increasing the taxes is a good thing, or unless the opposite is true for people on the left. You wouldn't. It's the same argument. You can't persuade someone about those very core issues, because it's not doesn't have anything to do about reasoning or intellectual understanding or yeah, those kinds of things. Okay, I think finally maybe I had I just found it interesting that I asked Midjourney AI on Discord to make me a picture of a politician, a slimy politician laughing, a corporate guy, something like that. I don't know, slimy politician laughing. This is what artificial intelligence bot did, and I was just struck because it looks like the chair that Morpheus. It reminds me of the Matrix. And of course, we can see other using the confirmation bias here that we see money there, which are green, and there's a lot of other stuff on those bills that can be interpreted in different ways that has to do with the matrix. But in plain sight, it just looks like the chair and the dark. The black in the background just really reminded me of it, and so I had to look it up, and I did a search for Morpheus and the Matrix and the chair, and I realized I was mistaken in the chair. It's not the same. It's not the exact one, but it's sort of similar, right? It is really. I wouldn't say eerie, maybe, but I just had a, there's no better pictures. This is probably the best picture for it. It's very similar, and I just found it interesting that maybe it was just a coincidence, but it was, how would we know? I just found it interesting. Okay, so that's it